What's up, Internet? SP here for the Marduk report, and today's video we're going to be finishing up that NAS build that I did way too long ago. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch here. If you have, you already saw what the setup is like, what the actual build is like, so now it's time to actually set it up and put it to good use. So with this video, we're going to go through the final bits that you need to actually do the setup. We're going to go through the basic setup so that any device that's connected to your network can actually see it. And then I'm just going to go over my final thoughts, what I think the shortcomings are, what I would do differently, and my plans for the NAS in the future. So with that said, let's get to it. All right, so to keep on going with setting up your NAS, your new NAS with NAS for free, there's a few more things that we're going to need to gather in order to actually finish this setup. So the first thing you're going to need is a keyboard like this one. You're also going to need a monitor like this. And lastly, you're going to need a USB flash drive. Now the minimum size for the flash drive is going to have to be 4 gigs. Bigger is better, so 8 to 16 is usually the sweet spot. I've got a 16 gig here, which is plenty fine. And then aside from that, you're going to need 2 pieces of software. One is obviously the NAS for free operating system, and the other one is going to be any kind of image writing software, because you're going to need to write the NAS for free image to a USB drive, like what we got here. You're going to want to head over to nasforfree.org, and once you're here, it's a little bit of information, but basically we want to either jump to the downloads page. So you can either click on downloads here on the left hand side, or just go straight for the green button on top that takes you to the SourceForge page. So once you're actually at the SourceForge page, there's a few different options. The newest release is 11.0.0.4. When I did my build initially, I was on 10.3.0.3. So let's just go with the new one. And then within actually this folder, there's going to be a few different versions. Again, just go with the newest one. And then here, now we have a few different options. There's a couple of text files, but there are 3 different versions of the newest version of NAS for free. And there's 2 of them are live versions and 1 is embedded. So the live versions are live CD and live USB that basically allow you to run the operating system from whatever media that is in the name. So live CD, you would be able to burn that image to a CD and then run your NAS from the CD. And the same with the USB, like you'd be able to run the NAS off of a USB drive with live USB. The issue with this is that if for any reason the power went out to the NAS, so let's say you shut it down, or let's say you had a brownout or something, when you booted it back up, it would be like a blank slate. Not necessarily you would lose all your files. That depends on what actually happens. So if you had just shut it down manually, like said, system shut down, and then booted it back up, all the settings would be gone. Because it's a live version, you can't actually write any files to it. So what you actually want, if you want to keep this, and I'm sure you do, to keep it running and to keep it so that if you have to reboot it, shut it down, and bring it back up, all your settings are still there. You're going to want to go with the embedded version right here. So we're going to grab, so I'm not going to download this because I already have, but this is the one you want to grab right here. And then so we've got a few different versions, but this is, where is it? So this is what I downloaded, right? This is the NAS for free. It comes in a zip file, or a RAR file. So I just went ahead and extracted it, and I now have an image file. So the other piece of software, let's move this down a little bit. The other piece of software you need is something to write the image file to the flash drive. There's a bunch of different things from Power, ISO, Image Burn, but Win32 Disk Imager, right here, this actually works really, really well. It's super simple. Actually, I don't even have to show you a screenshot because I have it open. So this is it. Like literally, it's a really simple program, but it's really effective and really it's just really good at doing that. It's really good at writing image files to flash drives. So this is the software that I'm going to be using to write the image once you've downloaded it. Put this back in. So once you actually have your image file downloaded, you've downloaded and installed Win32 Disk Imager. Next is to actually write the image to your flash drive. So basically you just go, you browse, you find your image wherever you had it set up. So for me, setups, oops. So right here, so setups, grab the image, open the image, and this has disappeared behind here. And then select your device. So your devices are going to be anything that is a USB drive plugged into your system. So you're going to want to be careful here, because whatever device you have choose, it will wipe everything connected to it. Now thankfully it doesn't actually see SATA drives, so all of your hard drives are okay as long as you're not having any external hard drives plugged in. If you have any externals, I would suggest unplugging them. That's a simple and a slight suggestion, just to be safe so that you don't actually write them over. So right here I have N and I. N is actually my SD card for my camera, and I is this flash drive. So once you have your flash drive picked, you just click on write, click on boop, and you're going to get a little window saying it's going to overwrite everything. So of course, yes. So you can just let it go. Cool, write successful. So then we can just exit this. We don't need anything else in this computer anymore. So now we are off to the actual NAS to plug in our flash drive that we just wrote NAS for free to. Let that set up, and then we're going to come back here and finish doing the setup. So this takes about 5 to 7 minutes-ish, and you're just going to see code on the screen, just scrolling. And it's going to just keep doing that. As long as it doesn't stop for longer than like 2 minutes, it's good. There are a couple of points where it looks like it may hang. Just let it sit. If it sits for longer than 5 minutes, then it has hung, but let it sit. It'll go through the entire thing and will present you with one screen and that audible beep, that's when you know you're actually at the setup screen. So once you're here at the setup screen, it's going to display the default IP address of the NAS, which is in yellow. And then there's a bunch of options for shutting it down, installing onto actual hard drives, things of that nature. What you want to do is make sure, A, you set up, you take note of the IP address, and then set up an admin password for the entire NAS. So this is what will let you log on to the NAS box from a web UI. So once the web UI, there's a part for setting up the web UI, and that has setting up the password as well. So once this part is done, you can unhook your keyboard, unhook the monitor, go put those back, and head over to another computer that's connected to your network and set up the web UI. You'll be brought to this system general setup page. So you give, like you said, like I was just saying, this is where your username is set up. There's a tab if you want to change the password, which you should most certainly go to. So you type in current password and then set a new one. Click save. I'm not changing my password. So here, again, there's a lot of things that are not in bold. You'll notice that host name here is bold, but nothing else is. Anything that's in bold is mandatory. It's kind of like filling out a form and having a little asterisk after it. It's mandatory in order for you to actually save. In order for you to actually save any progress that you make. So fill out, give the host name, domain local, just leave local. If you want DNS settings, this is where you enter them. I use the default DNS for your IP, ISP, sorry, and set the time and date. It's always just nice to have. Click save. Yep, and changes have been applied successfully. Yay. So So the first thing to do is to come up top, go to disk, and then go to management. So you notice here that I actually have all of the hard drives already here. When you show up here, it'll be like this, and it'll be all blank. So the first thing you want to do is go over to this plus sign. You're going to see a lot of this plus sign, this whole setup. And you want to click plus, and there's a drop down menu with the actual disk. So for this moment right now, since again I've already imported all of my hard drives, there's only one drive here. What yours will look like is something more like this. And be careful here, because everything that's connected to this NAS is in this list. So not only is it all the hard drives, but it is this Toshiba flash. This is the flash drive that is running the operating system. Do not add this to the list to import to your pool. Just leave it. So import all of your hard drives. So you just select the drive. You can give it a description. And then there are also some other options here, such as hard drive standard. God. There's some other options here like hard drive standby time, power management, acoustic level. These basically all dictate how much power each drive is going to use. You can enable smart monitoring if you'd like. It's not a bad thing for the computer to know and be able to manage what the temperatures are and things like that with the hard drives. And a pre-formatted file system. Leave this at unformatted so it can wipe the drives, and we could set up a ZFS or ZFS pool. So then you would just click add. I'm going to click cancel because I don't have any drives here to add, but you would click add for each hard drive. And then this list will populate one drive at a time. Once you add a hard drive, you then also have to click apply changes. That's actually important for everything. You have to apply the changes first before anything actually will work. Because in the status, it'll actually stay standby instead of online. Once you click apply changes, each drive will then be set to online. So once you have all of your drives imported, you're actually going to come over here to HDD format or hard drive format. So you're going to select your disk. Again, I don't have anything here, but yours will look more like this, where you have a list of every drive that you've imported and it is not formatted. So you would click here, select the drive. You can only select one drive at a time, and then click on file system. Again, since we want this NAS for free to use ZFS and use the ZFS pool system and the ZFS RAID system, we're going to come down here to the file system and click ZFS storage pool. And then we can click format. Again, I'm not clicking format here because there's nothing for me to format. But you would click format for every drive. So then you'll have your list of all your 5 drives, or however many drives you decide to put in. A good rule of thumb is that ZFS needs 3 drives to do a pool with single parity, right? You can't do one drive parity, single parity, if you only have 2 drives. So you need at least 3 to do that. So once you have all your drives imported, we're going to come back up the disk again and go to ZFS or ZFS. So you'll be greeted with all of these lovely options. So this was a little confusing for me the first time because you have to do it in a very specific order in order for everything to work. So this is where you take it to immediately: pools and management. You can't manage a pool because you don't have one yet to make. And you can't make a pool because you don't have a VDEV or a virtual device to put the pool on, right? So first things first, you're gonna come over here to virtual device. And you see I already have my VDEV set up, but you would there'd be nothing here, and you would click the plus sign. and then give it a name, whatever, right? And then you want to pick the type, and this is where this is important. So this is how you're going to set your ZFS RAID setup, of what kind of setup it's going to be. You can either, you have your choice of a ton of things, from stripe mirror, 3 different levels of RAID Z parity, hot spare cache, log and log mirror. For this build, I'm running a single parity RAID Z. So I can at least explain stripe. You guys should know what stripe is. It's just striping all the data across all the drives. So if you have the most amount of storage space, but if you lose a drive, you're boned, right? Mirror, again. So mirror, again, you guys know what that is. I'm not gonna explain it. So the single parity, double parity, and triple parity RAID Z, these are the shining points of NAS for free, and free NAS actually as well. These are where it pulls the drives together, but it gives you a bit of protection and can rebuild the pool if you lose a specific amount of drives. So single parity allows you to have one drive give a catastrophic failure, and you can replace that drive and still rebuild the pool. The issue with this is that if one drive fails, and you've got to replace that drive, if another drive fails before you replace the first dead drive, that's it. The pool is gone. All your data is gone. The difference between single, double, and triple parity is literally how many hard drives you can lose at once before the entire pool is gone. So double parity, you can lose 2 drives at the same time. If you lose a third one, you're screwed. Triple parity, same deal. You can lose 3 hard drives at once, but then when you lose a 4th one before replacing the first 3, then you're screwed. So for this build, going with single parity, you can give it a description if you want, and click add. Once you click add, apply changes. And now you want to come over to management. So now you have a VDEV set up. So now you actually then need to set up a pool, right? Because this is how it's gonna, when we get to a little later, this is how you're actually gonna set all of your data sets. So I've got my little plus, I've got mine already set up, but yours again will be blank, more like this. And you're gonna click the plus, give it a name, and then you're going to select the virtual device, the VDEV, in which the pool is going to sit on. So this will only have one choice if you had selected all of your drives prior. So now that you've made your pool on your VDEV, your virtual device, you now need to create one last thing before we start making folders. So you now need to create data sets in order for, this is basically the connection point on the drive where you can actually put your data. So eventually you're gonna make these data sets, and then we're gonna connect them to Samba shares. So basically these are basically folders. These are the main folders that sit on mount. So create a data set. So I've already got a bunch of data sets already here. Click the plus sign, and then let's give it a name like setups. So we choose our pool that we made. Leave compression off. Leave this off. This is dedupe. This is basically, it will scrub the entire pool and make sure there's only one version of any given file. So it gets rid of any kind of duplications. The reason you leave this off is because it takes a massive amount of RAM in order for this to run properly. And if you don't have enough RAM, it's going to bring your system to a crawl. When I say massive amount of RAM, I'm talking like, I think the minimum, what they say in the installation notes, is something like 5 gigs of RAM per terabyte. So I would literally need like 100 gigs in order to keep this, in order for this to run. So we're going to leave that off. We're going to leave sync, standard, access time, all turn access time if there's specific times you want to be able to access it on or off. We're just going to leave it off. And we're just going to leave everything else at default. So once we have all of that, click add, and then we're going to click apply changes. Right? So we've now added a data set called setups, which is right here. So you don't have to do all of your data sets all at once. Unlike the previous steps, from here on out, you can do this whenever you feel like, whenever you have a need arise. So if you just need to do one, just to start off with, that's fine. Or if you want to do, like, sit here and do 20, go right ahead. Until then, so at least make one though. You gotta make one, and then we're gonna go up to services, and as you can see, there's a ton of services. Everything from SSH, which is here. You can set up sync thing. You can set up a web server, BitTorrent. Here we go, BitTorrent. Universal plug and play. But what we need for this is CIFS SMB, so Samba. So a Samba share is what we're gonna make. So I've already actually enabled this, but when you get here, it'll actually look like this, and you'll have all of these settings that are all great, but you can't click on a damn thing. So make sure your window's set wide enough, because there have been times where I have not been able to see this enable button and have trying to figure out what the hell's going on. So enable's over here, all the way over on the right, in the very top. So once you enable it, then you can see everything. So before I even change any of these settings, we can come into here over the shares. And so it'll give you your path, what you named it, any kind of comments, and then if it's browsable and if it's accessible by guest. So again, you'll have nothing here as like this. But what we want is to click the plus sign. So we're going to set up a share. So we're going to give it a name, like setups, or it's just set up, sure. Give the comment for the tubes, and then give it a path to actually connect to. So you go to give the path, you'll actually have a separate window that pops up like this. That'll give you your, it already started at mount point, and give you your parent directory. And then you just pick whatever data set you want. So setups, and then you just click OK. And again, everything that's bold is mandatory. Everything else you can leave as is. So, which I'm going to just leave as is. But notice that, like, you have things like you can make the Samba share read only, browsable. You can basically hide it. You can enable guest access. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So I'm just going to do that. Click add, and then our good old message of that we've changed settings and that we need to apply them first before something will work. So apply changes. Changes have been applied successfully. So now when we come over like this, we can see that I've got the folder setups here in Windows. So now I can just access the whole thing. So I can put whatever files I want on here and access them from just about any device that's connected to the network. And that's Wi-Fi or wired, doesn't matter. So scoot that back out. And that is actually it. So let's go to status. This is general, actually, where I leave this window. So status gives you a bunch of things. It does not give you your IP address, but it does give you like what version it's running, the platform, CPU temperature, CPU usage, memory, disk space, all that kind of stuff. You can go dig further in if you want to see different things. I know there's one that shows you like how hot. Yeah, this is where I generally leave it at. CPU usage, frequency, and the temps are all updated on, I think, 5 to 10 second intervals. So it's just easy for me to like look over and say like, oh, okay, it's not running too hot, or it's running super hot. So like I said, when I made it V2 and added the extra fans, the temps that you're seeing here are about where it stays all the time, regardless of whether I drop files in or not. And actually, I will drop a file in just so you can see. Let me find a file that's actually got some size to it. Just so you can see what the actual, how it jumps. So as you see, I'm transferring a file right now. And this is about the usage it gets. And that was, I literally just transferred about a gig. And you'll see temps drop, CPU usage drops right back down. So that's the basic setup. If you need extra Samba shares, extra data sets, you just repeat the process for as many data sets and as many Samba shares as you want. I'm not going to go into setting up other services. This is just the basic setup of how to get the NAS up and running so you can start stuffing it full of files. So that's it for the basic setup for NAS for free and this NAS. If you have any questions, hit me up down below in the comments. You guys know that I'm always down there answering questions as long as you're not being a jerk. So with that now out of the way, I want to focus on a couple of things that I want to wrap this video up with. So the first thing I want to talk about are some issues and some concerns I saw in the comments. Then I'm going to switch to what I'm going to keep doing with this NAS and my future plans for it. And then finally I'm going to wrap it up with what I would do differently next time. Yeah? Sound good? All right. So, tackling the comments, first thing I saw a few people asking, because of how this setup works, they want to know if Plex and BitTorrent Sync and BitTorrent work with NAS for free in this setup. Plex, no. BitTorrent Sync, no. BitTorrent, yes. And the first two no's for Plex and BitTorrent Sync should have asterisks after them because it's no officially. Both of those applications and both of those services actually do work within NAS for free, but there's no official plugin / service in the menu of the operating system. So it's something you're going to have to actually install via code yourself. I haven't looked into how to actually do either one. Actually, I technically have looked into it because I put links down below for anyone that's actually interested. But for my own personal use, I don't need either of those. I think for Plex, if you want to watch like your 1080p 10-bit color with uncompressed FLAC audio movie on your phone, like get a better playback device. Like do yourself and the media that you want to watch a favor and just get a better playback device. You can set up something like an HTPC using an AMD, like basically the same hardware from here minus all the hard drives. You can actually do it even cheaper with getting rid of the GPU and putting in an A10 or an A8 CPU and like a flash drive and using Kodi. So you can do it for like $200, maybe $250, and have all the playback you want. Now I don't know if that would work for 4K content because I don't have a 4K TV to actually test that with, but that will come soon enough because I will want 4K so I can get rid of these guys behind me and have a single 4K. But that's another video. For BitTorrent Sync, again, it is something you have to do yourself. You're gonna have to roll your own. Again, and link down below for how to actually set it up. It's not official. I don't know how well it works. According to the forum thread that I found in it, it seems like it works, but I also don't have another system to have the BitTorrent Sync set up with to sync files back and forth between. So it's, for me personally, it's of no use. But I know for other people that have multiple setups in like your personal office and your home office, that's two separate locations, like that would actually be amazing. For BitTorrent, yes, there is a client built in, it is transmission, But I believe for this, I would rather have a separate BitTorrent client box rather than running my NAS all the time for downloading BitTorrent files. I don't know what you're downloading, and I guess technically you don't really know what you're downloading until you're done downloading it. So I would say just run something else. I've seen setups where it's Western Digital MyBook Live, so it's the little, not little, but it's the single external hard drive that just has an Ethernet port on the back, having PuTTY installed on that and running transmission on that, and that is a completely separate and isolated BitTorrent box. So I would say recommend doing that over running BitTorrent on your NAS. Hard drives. So there were maybe like 1 or 2 comments about me not using NAS drives for this build. And the reason I really went with the drives that I have in here, these Seagate 4TB desktop drives, is really mainly due to Backblaze's research and the numbers that they put out. As of Q3 2016, so that's like November-ish, I think was their last report. And out of their roughly 50,000 hard drives, they have something like 30,000 drives of these same Seagate desktop 4TB drives running with a failure rate that's like less than 3%. So almost like, yeah, like why would I want to do, or not necessarily why. For me personally, I don't see the difference in using a desktop drive that has clearly been proven versus using a NAS drive that's reputation is good, but is anecdotal and through marketing. The same Backblaze drive does have Western Digital Red 4TB in their research and in their findings, but they're only running roughly, I think it was like 300 to 400 of the drives. So when you compare, when you have a sample size of 30,000 versus only like 300, like of course I would go with the sample size that is much larger because it's a much better representation of how all these drives actually perform. And it's also the price difference, and that is the other reason why I went with the Seagate desktop drives instead. Now it's not a large price difference. Last I checked, it was like 20 to 30 bucks. I don't know exactly what it is as of right now, but that was maybe like 2 months ago. And when you're doing 1 or 2 drives, like that price difference isn't terrible, but when you scale that out to even 5 drives, 8 drives, that price difference is now the price of a hard drive or 2 hard drives. So for me, I didn't see a reason to buy the NAS drives when I saw that the desktop drives were performing more than adequately. The last thing that I actually want to do, and it's too much in depth for this video, is I want to set up an OwnCloud installation on the NAS. And OwnCloud is basically an open source, private encrypted cloud storage service. So it basically allows your NAS to become your cloud storage. And so that is going to be the last thing that I do for my NAS in terms of still getting it set up. Once I've got that done, I'll be happy. So like with this being my first really big network attached storage, having this much space available to me, I love this NAS. I think it's amazing. I have never really been happier with a computer project up until this point. But now that I've actually done it, there are of course things I would do differently if I had to do this again. So the biggest thing I would change is that I would upgrade the size of the motherboard to micro ATX. I would still use an FM2 Plus socket because they're really cheap, really inexpensive, but upgrading the micro ATX would get me 2 more DIMM slots for RAM. And that is key because with 2 more DIMM slots, I can now have I can easily put in 32 gigs of RAM. And ZFS really likes to have 1 gig of RAM per 1 terabyte of storage. So having 32 gigs of RAM would allow me to have 32 terabytes of storage. So that leads me into the next thing I would do if I had to do this again differently, which is buy more drives. So I'd buy 3 more drives of the same Seagate 4 terabyte drives. So that allowed me to have 32 terabytes of actual storage. And which now leads into the third thing. If I'm going to buy more drives, I'm also going to need a bigger case to put them in, because the BitPhoenix Phenom only holds 6 drives. So instead, I would get a Fractal Node 804. So it looks kind of like the 304, the little tiny shoebox one that's like this big, but it's bigger. So it's micro ATX, dual chamber, and holds 8 hard drives. So I would get that instead. I would use that as my case. Also, being able to have 32 gigs of RAM on the motherboard allows me to get cheaper DDR3. Like, it's not too much cheaper, but it is cheaper than buying DDR4. The other thing I would change on this is I would buy a CPU with a GPU built in. Now, granted, it is not something you use all the time. Like, you really only have to use it when you set it up, or if you power down the system and turn it back on, where you actually need the GPU. But not having a discrete GPU in the system, it would be really nice, because it would reduce the heat, and B, it would reduce the electrical consumption. Now, when I did my calculations of how much money I would save if I got a CPU with a GPU built in, instead of using the discrete GPU that's in there, which is I believe a Radeon 6770, I think. It would take me about 12 to 13 months to actually recoup the cost of buying a new GPU at like $70. So that is why I didn't actually do it to begin with, because I was like, you know, that's a long time to wait for some savings to actually kick in. So yeah, but next time I would definitely do a new CPU with a GPU built in. For my final thoughts to wrap this up, this is a great NAS. NAS for free is an amazing operating system, and if you have any kind of old hardware, like, I would highly recommend running NAS for free, especially if it's non-Intel hardware. Run NAS for free instead of trying to run FreeNAS. If you really, I mean, like, it is burning in your soul that you need Plex or BitTorrent Sync. Well, BitTorrent Sync is nice, but like, if you really need Plex, or if you really want to run, like, I don't know, Sickbeard or Couch Potato, I guess go Intel. I don't know really, like, I can't give you a recommendation on what CPU to use for Intel. I would try to keep it really low, like i3 levels, maybe even like sell around the G4 blah 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 4XXX. I can't remember what the numbers are. I would try to keep it around there, but I don't know what those CPUs are like in FreeNAS, if they are enough oomph. I'm assuming that they are. I know the AMD A10 sits around i3, like between i3 and i5. It's not really i5 level, but it's like, I think maybe just a little bit more than the i3. But yeah, so that is it for this NAS setup. It is finally done. So get out there, go build your own. If you have any questions, any comments, leave them down below, or find me on Twitter. If you want to build something else, or you want to build something similar to this, or if you want to build something else a little differently, like, go on the PC part picker and then just drop me a link to the parts that you pick out, and I'll take a look at them if you want me to. But thank you all for watching. Click the like, which I think, no, subscribe here for more videos like this. Like over here for if you actually enjoyed this video, or if you got something useful out of it. And thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.